So Avatar Sentai Donbrothers is in the process of wrapping up right now, and man, it's been a wild ride. I mean, I can't exactly say I've been super into it, but I've been trying to vibe. It's just the show's nature to focus more on insane, absurdist humor than the actual story, and only give us like fleeting, huge moments here and there, has been a bit much for me. But what better way to squeeze some last-minute clicks out of the show than by talking about its flagship product? I'm speaking, of course, about DX Don Onitaijin. And I gotta admit, I've just never been super into Sentai mecha toys. I like the designs, but in practice, the toys never look super fun to me. And that's largely due to the fact that the engineering kinda stagnated in the 70s. I mean, sure, the plastic changes here and there, and they've incorporated gimmicks over the years, but largely it is the same set of vehicles combining into different looking robots that can't really move all that much, and that's just not that exciting to me as a toy collector, which is why Don Onitaijin did interest me, because Sentai toy sales have actually been trending downwards a lot in recent years, and that's led to a lot of long-standing rumors of the show's cancellation, which I've never had much stock in, largely because, well, Sentai is doing the worst of most of the big Toku shows. A lot of toy brands have been trending downwards in recent years. The past 15 to 20 years in general have just seen there be less and less toy sales, and that's mostly due to the fact that more and more kids are just more interested in video games than they are classic analog toys at younger ages. It's nothing to do with the actual quality of what's been put out, because I do watch reviews of these things. I do think there's still good work being done on Sentai Mechs. It's just they clearly weren't engaging kids as much anymore, and I think that was largely due to the fact that they were being outclassed by a lot of companies, especially Hasbro's Transformers and Sonic Kong's Tobots. But clearly the downward trend was a problem, and that's why for Donbrothers, not only did they bring in legendary writer Toshiki Inoue to shake up the show, but they actually stepped back and took their time in developing the new toy, and took inspiration for the direction of its engineering from one of the children of the designer who had the toy for the previous season and didn't really care for the fact that it couldn't move like it did in the show. And by the way, I love that people took this out of context and started acting like Bandai's designers are somehow idiots or bad at their jobs because it took a kid saying something for them to decide to make a change in the toys, when that's just how the toy industry generally works. Like, whether it's the designer's actual kids or kids they bring in for product testing, most toy design is influenced by input from children, because children are the ones who are going to want to buy it. Well, children and man babies who can't let go of their childhoods. And clearly they really believed in doing this and wanted it to go over well, because they did a whole big interview in one of the big Japanese toy collector magazines, which is where that little tidbit about the inspiration came from. And that big to-do actually worked on a lot of people, including myself, as well it did have a hefty price tag. I decided to go in on Don Onitaijin in blind faith, and I just wanted to see what it was going to be. I thought it was going to be one of the most interesting toys of the year at the very least, and I was right on that account, but that's enough preamble and prattling. Why don't we actually start talking about the actual toy and what I think of it? Alright, so I guess we'll start with Inu Brother Robotaro, as he's a good example of everything I like and am annoyed by with this set, because he's a good enough representation of the design from the show, maybe a little more bulbous in the front than it should be, but it looks nice. Just a nice little black doggo who is in actuality a very tortured man who's a pretty compelling character, maybe the most compelling character in the show for me. But if you look around him and you look at the box art, you'll actually notice there's quite a bit of painted detailing missing from this release. I don't know if that was an intentional sacrifice, budget-wise, to get him the size that he needed to be, but it's present on all of them, and just kind of annoys me in their individual modes. Like, there's not a lot of bang for your buck here. The only real paint in this mode is the blue lines on the sides and top. Articulation's a bit sparse in this mode too. I mean, he's got good ratcheted hip motion and a nice tail waggle, but that's it. The head is locked up, there's no torso articulation. You can't really get him in any poses besides standing there. And I mean, he does stand there with the best of them, but there's not much play value to that. Then we have Saru Brother Robotaro, who has a cool design, but character-wise, I never really get into in the show. I mean, he has a few fun gags here and there, and a hilarious focus episode, but like, just not a lot to him. Just not much compelling stuff going on, in my opinion. However, this toy is very interesting, as it has some of the best articulation out of the set, with very fully featured arms thanks to the main mode, but this one is actually kind of annoying in that the head is attached to it, so whenever you're posing it, you always have to kind of adjust the head behind yourself. And the ratchet joints for the shoulders actually feel kind of heavy for this mode, almost like it's going to shake itself apart, which may have actually been intentional, because in that interview I was talking about earlier, they revealed that Bandai actually engineers in specific breakpoints to Sentai mech toys these days, so if it falls off a high shelf or get crushed by something, there's not going to be any jagged parts a kid could get hurt with. There's a few neat, characterful monkey poses to be had here, though, so definitely one of the more fun individual guys in this set. And now on to Kiji Brother Robotaro, who is neat, but man, one of the most divisive characters on the show, am I right? I really dig him. I like what Inoue's been doing with him, but I can see why others are very annoyed with it. And I'm honestly kind of annoyed with this toy because it's very ropey in that it's got no feet, no landing gear of any kind. The design actually comes off more like a Chinese dragon to me than the crane it's meant to be. There's a really cool use of clear plastic here, though, and I love the frickin' sword tail. That's an excellent touch, and weapon integration is something I love to see on any kind of transforming toy. And here we are with Don Momotaro Robotaro, who is very cool looking in all his Patrick Star if he were a Power Ranger glory, but I just can't get behind him as an action figure because all the leg articulation is super ratcheted up for the combined mode, and the arm articulation is just useless because the arms can't move up and down at all. There is only this little bit of elbow articulation that's just there for the transformation and only really allows him to do his best disappointed dad pose. I mean, yeah, it is really cool to see a waist joint and a ball-jointed head on a Sentai toy, but there's just not much I can think to do with him except, again, have him stand there. And because of the extremely tiny feet, it's hard to get him to stand there on all but the most smooth surfaces. I don't know, man. I'm trying not to be down on this set, but for one of the most wild and dynamic reds we've had in a while, you'd think they'd at least give him the shoulder articulation to do his big belly laugh entrance that he always does in the show. And here we are with Oni's sister, Robotaro, the one that really influenced my opinion about this toy, because you might notice she's a bit plain. She doesn't look as complex as she probably should because she's supposed to be fully humanoid like Don Momotaro. She's supposed to be able to get around and do stuff, but in actuality, she's a glorified stick. There is no articulation here. The arms look like they should move, but they're really just single components that come off crazy easy and are only gonna separate a little bit from the body for the transformation. There's a tiny amount of swivel to the head, but I mean, just look at these legs. They're a single fucking component. And again, no torso articulation. So all she can do is stand there, which I know I shouldn't have expected much because she's the girl and Sentai doesn't tend to treat the girl all that well. But like, this girl is practically the main character of the show. So I feel like she deserves so much better than this hunk of crap. I mean, I get it. They were marketing it more about the articulation in the main combined mode, but personally, I feel if you're going to market articulation at all, then there should be a good amount in each component of the whole set. After all, why make a combining robot if you don't expect people to play with the individual modes as much as the combined mode? Just doesn't feel like the value for my dollar is evenly distributed here, which is pretty disappointing. Again, these guys can be fun. It's just, as a longtime Transformers fan, I feel like I'm getting massively less bang for my buck than I do with that toy line here. I mean, there's toys that date back as far as 2006's Transformers Cybertron that have more articulation and play value in alternate modes than these guys do. God, this is really starting to sound like just another one of those annoying angry YouTube guys. Let's see if we can salvage some of the joy of this set and the cool articulation by actually getting to that main combined mode. To me, my companions! One hell of a transformation. Like, I just love how natural it all feels. All the little clicky joints and connectors snapping together in this really cacophonous and fun way that results in a final impressive moment of the helmet slapping down and causing the chest to compress and the symbol to get revealed through this cool gear door mechanism. And the end result of just this huge figure. I mean, this is one of the biggest toys I own at the moment, and it really earns that size. The individual toys stack up in a fantastic way to create a fun and unique looking toy design. Like, obviously there's some clear general Sentai and Samurai influence going on here, but it has a flavor in and of itself that I really like and appreciate. And the lack of paint detailing I complained about in the individual modes do actually work in its benefit here, as the huge amounts of just primary color plastered all over this guy really pop and stand out on a crowded shelf. The articulation is really good in this mode too, as Sorrow and Momotaro work together to deliver some joints that have never been seen before on Sentai toys up till now, like the aforementioned head ball joint, waist swivel, and freaking ankle tilts on a Sentai toy. That is insane. The ball jointed wrists are insane, and it's all very fun and nice to see, but it is a bit limited and hampered by stuff like Kichi's wings sometimes getting in the way of the arms and having to be readjusted, and the fact that Momotaro's skirt piece here is one solid plastic piece, and it makes it so you can only move the legs so far. They clearly want to go out more, but they just pop off their joints when you push them more than that, and I feel like the toy really would have benefited from separating this up into multiple parts that could hinge out on their own, again, kind of like Transformers does. And I guess the Bandai design team agreed with me on that because not 5 months after this thing was released, they put out an upgrade kit for it that was a glorified accessory pack that also happened to come with a skirt that could hinge out on multiple joints. It looked like it would be pretty easy to replace, but $40? That's half the cost of this set. I am not paying that much for one new component that I feel should have been included on the base set. Bandai loves to milk fans like this with premium after exclusives that add on to toys in ways that should have been there from the start. They've done it for years with Kamen Rider drivers and whatnot, but to see it incorporated on a Sentai mech that was being pushed as a super articulated and posable toy was really disheartening and kind of turned me off to the whole rest of the toy line. Because again, this guy on his own is kind of fun. I like the slashing poses you can get him in once you take these swords out and pop him in his hands. Like, this does look really dynamic, but I think it would look even more so if I could give him a wide-legged stance to go along with it, and I'd love to get like some high kick poses as well out of this guy, because with the ankle tilts, he could probably manage it. So overall, I do like Don Onitaijin as his own figure, but the individual Robotaros leave a lot to be desired, and on the whole, I just feel like this set was an inch when we really needed a mile, and personally it left me wanting so much that even though I do see more improvements on the upcoming King Oger main mech, I'm gonna skip it. It's a lot of money right now, a lot of money I don't have, but could have if you pledge to my Patreon. And I'd rather save what little money I do have to go into toys back for a few months after that, when we're going to be getting the Zap Astro Megazord from Hasbro. That looks like a phenomenal Sentai Power Rangers Megazord mech toy, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. I mean, again, I certainly don't hate this guy. I'm not going to get rid of him anytime soon, but he just could have been so much better. Which is why I have to remind you all that I'm the Vacuuminator, and you never fail until you stop trying. Which is why I really hope that the Bandai design team doesn't stop trying to improve Sentai Mecha after King Oger. I hope they keep going and getting better and better to the point where we have really well articulated individual mechs that are as fun to play with as the robot, and the robot is a great robust toy on its own too. But until that day, I'll see you all around. Take care.